Welcome everyone to tonight's Palestine Talks. So for those of you who have been here before, you're going to hear a lot of redundancy, and for those of you who haven't, welcome. So I always get a little bit nervous, weirdly. I love talking in front of people, but I have to break that ice. So I always tell a really corny joke. And so this week's joke is, which way did the programmer go? Anyone? Anyone? He went dad away. Get it? Okay. Not as good. Next time it'll be better. All right. So we're gonna get rocking and rolling. Feel free to get up. There's water back there. Remind me what you brought, Gabby? Gabriela? Conchas. So there's some conchas back there, and snacks, water, cookies. Just help yourself. Feel free to get up and. If you haven't been here, bathroom is out the door to the right in the bank of bathrooms and sinks. All right, so I'm going to begin with the land acknowledgement that the land we are on, which we gather, is within the ancestral territory of the Squabs people of the clear saltwater, the Suquamish. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Squabs live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's central Salish seas, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Squabs live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. All right, so, of course, doing a land acknowledgement is very important. Also, understanding and acknowledging colonization, which happens everywhere and is currently happening in Palestine right now as well. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of introduction. Again, if you've been here before, it's going to be a little redundant, but we're going to start with the who. So Knowledge Connection Coalition is the organization that this program is under. And the first pillar is about knowledge sharing. And typically knowledge is either monopolized by privileged or confined to the minds of elders and needs to be shared. The second pillar of Knowledge Connection Coalition is about community connections. So through collective strength of community, people can find support and help each other throughout life. And then the last one is coalition building. So forging alliances among marginalized communities to collaborate on actionable solutions to unite and build a more equitable future. So what is a teach-in? A teach-in is a knowledge-sharing event. It's meant to engage in critical dialogue and community building through panel discussions and interactive exchanges. So one quick thing. So the idea is that this really focuses on, facts. I do my best to do historical facts. And lived experiences. So lived experiences are the strongest reality we have. One of the things we'll be talking about today, racial gaslighting, kind of negates those experiences. But the whole point is the panel speakers and the information I'm trying to give is based on those lived experiences. So why am I doing this? Why are we having these things? To empower individuals to become informed advocates and agent of change, and to serve as a strategy for raising awareness, promoting knowledge sharing, and mobilizing action on pressing issues. So again, one thing I really want to encourage when we have these discussions is if you have a question or if you want to kind of talk about something, please try to keep it in the I statement. That keeps the focus on you. That's your lived experience. When you start saying you or we or them, that kind of projects it outward and you're kind of putting that on other people. So if you have anything, please try to keep it in the I statement. And then I just always ask is, kind of check your motivations before raising your hand and asking a question or talking. Like, are you here to add to the conversation? Or do you really want to know something? Are you just speaking because we are humans and we have ego and sometimes we need to be heard? Just check yourself. I'm not saying don't ask or don't talk. Just think about those motivations. Okay, so everyone, if you don't have a note card, please go in the back and grab one. They're over by Nadia, who has the green shirt on, and a pen. And if you can please write your why. So why are you here? Why did you come? If you've been here before, why did you come back? And then why is this important to you? Why is being here and listening important to you? I also want to invite you all, if you need to move your chairs to see or be more comfortable, please feel free to do so. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'll ring my little bells.
You said your why?
Yep, why? Why are you here? Why is this important? Hi Janice, welcome. Got some seats up front. And we can open this up if we need to a little bit more. Hi, good to see you.
We're good to go.
Good, okay.
The volume got shut off or something on it, so, but everything's working.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah, we're on our why. All right. We're gonna. That's a lot nicer than my voice saying, hey, all right, we're done. You can keep writing. I'm just gonna keep moving through the kind of housekeeping slides. So for those of you who have been here, again, repeating, those of you who haven't, just a little bit of what to expect. We started at 6. We're going to end promptly at 7:30. We do have this space rented until 8. However, I ask that the next one is, if you have any conversations or anything, please move it to the kitchen area so we can kind of reset this area up for tomorrow. Also, Lauren, back there at the kitchen area, I don't know if you can see her. She does a fundraiser, Poppies for Palestine, where she makes poppy-themed jewelry, and all the proceeds go to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. So between 7:30 and 8, well, 7:30, 7:45, if you want to buy some stuff, please make your way over. And I have some wonderful earrings on, and they are quite comfortable. They're not very heavy. So the teach-in structure, so kind of a rough outline, going through the housekeeping right now. Next slide, we'll talk about kind of the recap from last month, a couple lessons learned. We'll talk about some word clarifications, Palestine information as it pertains to the topic. Intro to the topic and panel speakers, panel discussion, topic discussion. Then we can have depending on time, we'll have a community discussion and question section. I always end the Palestine Talks, the teach-ins, with action tools. I'm a very big, let's not just talk about it, let's have some action items. So we'll have 6 action items that you can do at your house, super easy, to kind of push forward some change. And then if anyone here has any community events or announcements, I did put the Fallout video, a couple of things on the event slide, but if anyone has announcements, please feel free. We're all about community building, coalition, solidarity building, so if you have anything, please let everyone know. And then community mingling and cleanup. All right, ground rules. So these are very important just to keep this a safe place. So this is a human issue, not a political or religious issue. As always, a lot of things in life are political, and there are underpinnings of religion in the rhetoric. However, it is really it's not focused on any ideologies. We want to make sure these are centered around lived experiences and effects of the colonization and marginalization. So this is a safe space. Making sure it's a supportive environment. So please, no judgment or kind of any comments or hostility. Calm conversations only. So we can agree and we can disagree, but we can do all of our disagreements and discussions in a calm way. Thankfully, in the 5 times I've done this, we have not had one issue. However, still going to say it, I am from the East Coast, and I'm not afraid to kick people out if I have to. All right, no question is stupid. So again, we're here to learn. We're here to understand from each other. So please feel free to ask a question without, fear of judgment or embarrassment. You don't know what you don't know. And a lot of the times we repeat things that we might hear someone else say, or rhetoric in the media or anything like that. So we're here to kind of get through that and bust that information if you have a question. So intentions are everything, and communication, education is easy. So again, if you have a question and you're like, oh, this might be like, I don't know if this is like, I don't know, racist, or I don't know if this is like, one thing or another. If your intention is to learn and you need to dispel that, I want to create a safe space that we can, and you can't learn unless you ask. So please just understand that if your intention is to learn, that's wonderful. Participation is important. So I don't like talking a lot. My panel speakers talk all the time because they're amazing powerhouse humans. So let's have some community discussion and participation. Again, action items are the goal. So again, it's really aimed at creating change and doing actionable steps to focus on supporting not only Palestinians, but other marginalized communities, especially here in Kitsap. And this is for everyone, no matter your race, religion, gender identity, all those wonderful things. We welcome everyone. Okay, why am I up here? I'm going to run through these real quick. So I'm Palestinian American. This is my activism for Palestine. So what is happening in Palestine is rooted in racism, but also I wanted to do this month because the realities of racism and marginalization in the U.S. are still happening in 2024. I understand if people don't see it, because again, if you don't see it, that means you're privileged enough to not see it. But the idea is community building and building some strong solidarity to understand our privilege and how we can use that to help. So again, it's important to me to not only share my experiences, but also to give a platform for others to share theirs, and a platform for people to learn. Because again, if you don't expose yourself to new stuff, you're not able to learn. It's important for me. Though I'm half Palestinian, half white. I rode my dad's white privilege through my whole life, so it's very important for me to use my privilege that I've had to amplify and support those who don't have the same privileges, and do what I can to amplify the situation that's going on in Palestine. And so today's topic is really important to me because I had an experience in Belize, and this one moment of my life made me slightly understand what racism here is in the US. And so I was in Belize, and I used to work with Indigenous, and so I was in an Indigenous village. I was the only white-facing person there. And there's a big tourist area, like 2 villages down, that all the white people go and colonize, and so all the Indigenous kind of leave. And so I was there visiting a friend, and he had to go to work, and he said, hey, go to this woman's food stand. It's the best in town, go. And so I went. I was standing in line, really long line, because she's amazing. And so I like to observe. So how do I order? They didn't have a menu, so people knew what she had, and I was just kind of listening and observing. So my turn got up, and the woman, she looked at me, and then she looked past me and asked the person behind me what their order was. And I was kind of a little confused, so I stepped to the side, and I was like, maybe I'm in the wrong line, I don't know. So 2 more people go by, and I'm just standing there, and so a woman finally stood up and said, hey, she was standing here, why didn't you get her order? And she said, oh, we don't serve your kind here. We don't serve white people here. And in that moment, I was like, this is just a minutia of what marginalized people go through every day, more than multiple times a day. And so for me, it's just I felt awful. And that is just a tiny blip in my life, And so this topic is really important to me. And it's really important that people understand that this is a real thing in the US. So quick recap, we had the parallels of Native Americans and Palestinians last month with Hunter Thundercloud. Our key takeaways is colonization has long-lasting intergenerational effects. Colonization of Native Americans and Palestinians are the same. What's happening, land stolen, all the effects are the same. The situation in Palestine is about colonization. It's about settler colonialism and taking of lands. The effects of colonialism on the Native Americans were introduction of new diseases, nature becoming off balance, theft of land and resources, culture and language genocide, and erasure of Native American tribes and nations. So again, I get really sad to think about the future of Palestinians because I see the future, what Native Americans are dealing with now. And so for me, it's really important to kind of see these and understand these because that will be the future of Palestine if things don't change. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of words clarification. So colorism. I'm not sure if people hear too much about colorism, but it's a prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone. And typically this is among people of the same racial or ethnic group. However, it's not exclusive to that. But I saw a lot of that in Panama when I was living with an indigenous community. And then I'd go out into the city and they're like, oh, how do you live with those, like, you know, savages kind of thing? And I'm like, well, they're Panamanians. Like, and they're like, oh no, like, you know, and then there's a Afro-Caribbean population and they were, you know, there was so much racism against them too. So it's a real thing. So racism, again, we all learn this, but the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to another. And then again, racism is not just individual, it can be community based or institutional. And again, typically racism is against, well, not typically, it is against, it's a power dynamic. And so those with no power or little power, so you can't have reverse racism. So believe me, I heard this word in Arizona and it's not a thing. So if you've heard reverse racism, it's definitely not a thing. You cannot be racist towards white people. You can be prejudiced towards white people, but you can't be racist. All right, discrimination, unjust treatment for different categories of people, you know, on the grounds of ethnicity, age, sex, or disability. This is a really important one here, institutionalized discrimination, which is the unfair and indirect treatment of a group of individuals or people by institution or society, which is embedded in the laws, policies, procedures, and objectives. So we see a lot of institutional racism. I'm going to show you a couple more slides that will kind of show some examples of that. This one's really a new one for me, actually. I just learned about it. Racial gaslighting. So racial gaslighting is a psychological manipulation that causes people of color to question their own experiences. And it's social, economic, and a political process that perpetuates and normalizes white supremacy by pathologizing those who resist it. And so I only have 2 copies of this, but this is going to be provided in the Google Drive, but it's a wonderful article about anti-Palestinian racism and racial gaslighting. And so this is in Political Quarterly Journal. And the things that, you know, I just want to read this brief thing. So racial gaslighting, we take 3 dimensions as being part of racial gaslighting. So first, groups, not just individuals, can experience a denial of their lived experiences and reality that creates harm. The second is the technique of gaslighting is overwhelmingly directed at those with less power and works to maintain the status quo, which is settler colonial context means supporting the colonial project by diverting attention from the oppressor. So again, that victimizing the oppressor, that is a form of racial gaslighting. And then the third one is gaslighting informs involves a form of blaming the victim, typically by pathologizing those who resist. And so for Palestinians, 3 major forms of racial gaslighting is, which is quite nuts because Nakba denial. And so those of you who don't know, Nakba is the Arab term for catastrophe. It was the first genocide and the first exodus of over 750,000 Palestinians in 1948. That is what brought my grandparents here. And so a lot of the rhetoric on the other side is, oh, there was no Nakba, people just left, they were just migrating. So that is a form of racial gaslighting. Again, one of the things I heard, unfortunately, a lot in Arizona was Holocaust denial. That is a form of racial gaslighting. So for me, it's kind of nuts to hear Nakba denial when people are constantly fighting the Holocaust deniers. The second form is denying the power dynamics of apartheid. So denying that it is an apartheid state, denying that Palestinians are occupied people, colonized people, and just saying, oh, well, you know, they're on our land kind of thing. So that's another form of racial gaslighting. And then the third one is using labels. So labelizing them, well, they're terrorists, or they're anti-Semitic. You're anti-Semitic because this, and this. And, you know, and victim blaming. Well, you know, they perpetuated October 7th, so, well, that doesn't justify 10 months of genocide, right? So a form of racial gaslighting is that victim blaming as well. So that was a fun little thing I learned. And the last one is marginalization, which describes a person that is being treated insignificantly, pushed to the margins of society, and rendered powerless. So these are just a couple graphs. I'm not going to go too deep. They'll be in the resources section. But you can kind of see the system of equality here. The top ones are, you know, obviously traditionally normal, and the bottom ones are the marginalized. But I like this one because it kind of not only shows, like, it shows classism, racism, all of that. But again, these will be available in the resource section. I don't want to spend too much time. Maddie, a couple months back, introduced me to the Wheel of Power and Privilege. I actually found a way more detailed one, which I love. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Wheel of Power and Privilege, the closer you are in the center, the more power you have. So you can see if you're a native English speaker, if you're Christian, if you're rich, able-bodied, if you're white. So this is the power center. And then the farther you go out, the more divergent you are from what this power center are, the more marginalized you are. So again, if you're poor, again, your religion that's not Christian. So this is a really cool thing. And one of the activities in Maddie's mentorship program is to kind of find out where you are on this wheel and understand your kind of power and privilege. And again, you know, this is created by society, and it's not meant to make you feel bad about it. It's meant to make you reflect and say, okay, if I am in this center, what can I do to, you know, support those who are on the outer skirts? So privilege isn't the presence of perks and benefits. It's the absence of obstacles and barriers. So again, one of the best examples is, like, if you get pulled over by a cop, are you afraid you're going to get arrested? Are you afraid you're going to get put in jail? Like, are you afraid you're going to get beat? Or you're just like, a little annoyed because you got pulled over by a cop, you pay the ticket, you might be able to laugh your way out of it. So that's those kinds of things, thinking, you know, I don't know if Gabriella will go into this, but like going into a doctor, and I know a lot of women, specifically women of color, but women in general, going into a doctor, it's sometimes you're not believed, or sometimes it's like, oh, well, it's just this or it's just that. So again, privilege is when you don't have to deal with the obstacles. This I'm not going to really go through. It kind of just goes through the systems of racism. There's too much today, and I want to get to the speakers. This is a really cool thing I found. So I don't know if you all know Visualizing Palestine. They're a nonprofit organization that creates visuals for Palestine. They created a 5-part series called Equal. And what this does is, let me get so I can read. So this actually shows the inequalities of Black Americans and Palestinian citizens of Israel as two citizen communities founded on ethnic and racial supremacy. So each of the parallel statistics you'll see on education, incarceration, poverty, etc., exhibits the shared burden of institutionalized discrimination. So again, it's showing that these statistics are showing a systemic inequality. One of the most important things, because I don't want to have to repeat this phrase every single time, these graphs are talking about Palestinian citizens of Israel. So those who are living in what is Israel, and they're considered citizens of Israel, but they are Palestinian citizens of Israel. So there's, the Gazans who are completely in an occupied territory. There's a West Bank, which is an occupied territory, and then there's Palestinians that live in what is Israel, but they are Palestinian citizens of Israel. So we'll do these quickly. But you can kind of see here, my little pointer. So Black Americans and Palestinian citizens of Israel are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than white Americans and Jewish Israelis. So you can kind of see here, again, 24% of Black Americans are in poverty and 47 Palestinians in Israel are in poverty, as opposed to 9% of white people in the US and 14% Jewish in Israel. The next one is Black Americans and Palestinian citizens are significantly more likely to be unemployed than white Americans and Jewish Israelis. So again, you can kind of see the statistics over here. I'll put those in the resource. I'll send them out after the event. But again, what I really like is Visualizing Palestine, again, really tries to work to bring what's happening in Palestine to the parallels here. On average, Black Americans and Palestinian citizens receive 1/4 less income than white Americans and Jewish Israelis. So you can see here, Black Americans, I don't know what year this was, 2017. $30K versus white Americans making $40K. Obviously, that is not with inflation. But you can see a Jewish income is $26K versus Palestinian in Israel is $18K. And then the last one talks about Black Americans and Palestinian citizens are 1/3 less likely to gain college education than white Americans and Jewish Israelis. So again, this just shows the different percentages. And then the last one is, if convicted for the same crime, Black Americans and Palestinian citizens can expect to spend nearly twice as long behind bars as white Americans and Jewish Israelis. So in the US, if a white person had 55 months, a Black person gets 90 months, a Jewish Israeli gets 9.5 months, or a Palestinian gets 14 months for the same crime. So again, I'll send this out. And then this is the last slide before we kind of get into our talk, but we can kind of see there's a lot of different individual effects of racism. There's emotional effects. There's a lot of information out there on aggressions, microaggressions, macroaggressions, all of that. Not going into that today, but you can see there's medical costs that are higher, physical issues. People of color tend not to be believed more than white people in doctors, so they're dealing with longer term medical issues. Social isolation, hyper awareness. So one of the things I heard from a friend is like, you're always hyper aware. You have to kind of look around the room and see, oh, is there someone else like me here? Can I go sit with someone? Can I feel that solidarity? Hyper aware of what you're doing because it can be seen as bad to someone, and there's just a higher probability of issues. So that takes a toll on someone, right? How exhausting is that? All day to have to think that way. And so again, social, emotional, PTSD, suicides can happen. And then you can see the societal effects. So racism can impact victim, family, community, leaders, neighbors. You can see communities become isolated, they become torn apart. And then this is important. So role of bystanders and allies. Our very first talk was about allyship. And so failing to intervene can worsen a target victim's psychological response, causing them to feel helpless and excluded and increasing in isolation. I've almost gotten hit twice in the face by a man because my instinct is just go run up and yell at someone when I see a racism happening. And so I was in Washington, D.C., and my ex and I were on those little scooter thingies, and this guy just drove up, and there's African-American family, a black family just like walking across the street, and this guy drove in his car and just started yelling like the N-word and all these things, and I turned my scooter around and I rode it right up and I like hit the front of that guy's truck and I just started screaming, and like you could like see his fist go back and his wife like grabbed it. I'm like, dude, like you don't, not the best. I was a lot younger than I am now. However, allyship, like for me, it just happens. Like if I hear anyone getting in any situation, if we're not treating each other like humans, that's my instinct. Again, as I got older, I assess and figure out what's the best way to support the person. But allyship is really important. Intervening is really important, and that's why being silent about the stuff that's happening in Palestine is hard. It's not good for people. I know it's divisive, and it's a very hard topic. But being an ally is important. All right, now we're going to get to the good stuff. So again, today we're talking about building solidarity with other marginalized group. What does it mean and how can we do it? So we have, I'm going to invite the panel speakers to come on up, grab a seat and a microphone. So we have Gabriela Ituarte, Daryl Riley, and Aiden Moore. Maddie Williamson was sick today, so she was not able to join us. I was going to say put the ladies in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I say. We should put the lady in the middle.
Nah, she gets to sit where she wants. But Daryl, you get used to by me. You're looking so fly with all your matching. It's my favorite. I love seeing Daryl speak because he's just like so like clean and looks so good every time.
Really good.
I'm not trying to flatter you, Daryl.
Set the ball way up there.
I know, right?
I think I got something important to say.
The first time I saw Daryl speak was actually here at a Creative Mornings like a year and a half ago. It was about pride, maybe? I don't remember. Acceptance, yes. So today we're going to hear about the lived experiences. I have some questions, but as per usual, I kind of just let the conversation roll as it may. Just a little bit about I put this in the email if you didn't get the email. So Gabriela is a clinical psychologist hailing from Mexico. Hold on, let me grab my little, so I don't have to read that part. Hailing from Mexico, Gabriela and her family moved to Washington. And in our conversation, she received a harsh awakening to the racism marginalization of the Latino community here in Kitsap, which led her to start the We Are Better Together Foundation. And the beginning questions, you'll get to hear a little bit about who she is and what she does. Daryl Riley, Daryl has worked hard to overcome the adversity faced by black males in America and is a thriving entrepreneur, businessman, and co-founder of the Up From Slavery initiative, which he will get to talk about today. I will skip Maddie. Aiden is a Chamorro and is an active member of the Kitsap Palestine Solidarity Group and has been actively working with others to bring the fight of Palestinian people to Kitsap. And a fun fact about Aiden, he had the pleasure of yelling at Derek Kilmer for supporting weapons to Palestine at the Pride Festival. So I went up to say hi, and he's like, guess what? I just yelled at Derek Kilmer. And I'm like, good for you. Our politicians need to hear from us, right? So without further ado, I'm going to, Amanda, do you have the remote for the, so yeah, I'll just turn that off so the light's not in anyone's eyes, and then we can turn it back on. All right, so I'm gonna kind of,
Use it to turn it off.
So it does work. It's not as it does work. Like yeah. So the microphones are for that. They're not going to amplify your voice.
Oh.
They're just for the video, but you still have to hold them up. All right, my friends, we're going to start. So this is a question for each of you. I'm You're adults, so you can pick who goes first. If not, I'll pick. But can each of you please share a bit about who you are and either what you do or what your organization does? Ladies first.
Thank you. Well, hi everybody. My name is Gabriela.
Gabriela.
Duarte. My name is Gabriela Duarte. I'm originally from Tijuana, Mexico. I'm a clinical psychologist of 28 years, going on 29 now. We lived in TJ. My husband and I married 23 years ago, and our families are native from TJ. And then we moved to San Diego. We lived there for many years, more than 10 years. And up to then, our experience was kind of the same, because Mexico and TJ, they're borders. So usually, we're kind of accustomed to each other. And so I always say that Tijuana has their own culture, and San Diego people have their own culture because we've been growing together since we're born, right? But a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, we moved all the way here. And like Whitney was saying, for me, it was my first experience with racism. And not that in San Diego there wasn't that much, but we lived in a majority of Latinos, right? So it's very different. The experience is very different. My kids, I tell a friend, well, I grew up feeling like a human being. I grew up feeling I belonged. I was very privileged. And then I moved here and people start having assumptions, right? First is the language part, because of course it's not my first language, so I'm very fluent, but I am not proficient in it because it's not my language, of course, right? And so the first assumption was hearing people say, you're so well articulated for being Mexican, right? So for me it was like, oh, so you're assuming that I am dumb. And this I get a lot, right? Oh, you're Mexican. There's this assumption of incompetence because I don't speak the language. And they're really surprised. I love surprising people because even though I studied in Mexico, I'm still a clinical psychologist. Here in China, in Japan, wherever you put me, I mean, I went to school, I have the knowledge, I did it for 28 years, so countries don't define your experience in doing something, right? So I keep the title in that sense. It's my honor, my privilege. I studied for it, so even though people say, oh, but not here. No, yeah, here too. I don't do it here, but I'm still a psychologist here. And so this brought me to a new reality, right? And for me, I would tell my husband, oh my God, I think we're not in Kansas anymore, darling, right? Because my kids were bullied. We have 2 kids, and that's how I got into all of this. We have 2 kids. I have a 17-year-old brown kid like me, and then I have a 9-year-old that's like that, white passing. And so their experience in school are so different. Right? My kid was made to eat in the bathrooms because she was one of 2 Latinos in the middle school, right? She would come crying, she would start, and we didn't know what was going on because we never been experienced this situation. We've never been treated this way until we started COVID hit. And so with COVID, it was a big blessing because I got to nurture my kids and they went home again. And that's when the talk started. This is happening. This is going in school. This is they're calling me this, they're doing this, right? And so I certified as a D&I specialist. That helped me a lot because that opened my eyes to another reality, right? How racism is experienced here, how there's all these structures created for us not to thrive, and especially how people assume because you're brown, you're stupid sometimes. For me, that's a day-to-day basis, and it follows me everywhere I go. The best kick I get is telling people that I'm a clinical psychologist, right? Really, you don't clean kitchens, you're not, usually we're identified with maids, we're identified with nannies, nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of people in Mexico, right? We do all stuff like any other country. We do every other thing. But here, there's this experiences, there's these expectations, and unfortunately for people of color, especially Latinos, they're not good expectations. They're bad, lower expectations, and you have to live towards them, right? And so that's why I started what I started. When I started looking in, I would do translations. I looked at the Latino community, and I started seeing how they were treated here in Kitsap County. It's really poor. They don't get interpreting services, not everywhere. We've done a good job because we have been advocating for it a lot. Their experience in the hospitals, everywhere they go. We have a large Guatemalan community, which I center a lot around because I keep telling people, this is me. This happened to me and my family, and I'm completely bilingual, right? I'm really well studied. I know how to defend myself, and my husband is bilingual, and so what happens with the people that don't speak the language, they can't defend themselves? What happens to them and their kids? So that's why we created We're Better Together Foundation. We've been working with the community for a long time, and we're working with literacy programs for them. We're working with them in their kitchens. We're working with them within the community, not expecting them to come to us, but we're going to them. And that's created a really big change because we've been doing all sorts of work to try to get them a voice, especially.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What school do your kids go to?
I will say it. So,
Say it. People should.
Top Elementary,
Okay.
predominant white. This was back in 2020. We've been working a lot to try to get those issues up. My daughter was the very first one that came up to the school board and started talking about her experience with racism. She's a really tough cookie, and I admire her a lot because she has been advocating and not being quiet. So far, when she got into CK High, people usually tell me, well, there's a lot of racism in the north. I keep telling them, no, there's also racism in central and in south and everywhere you go. The thing is that the structures are there and they're built to keep us out. My daughter started what was the first Latino student union, and they closed it in CK High in the middle of Latino Heritage Month. Yeah, that was her gift to us.
They couldn't even be like, check the box DEI, right? Like they couldn't,
No
yeah.
equity whatsoever, right?
Check equity.
At least have do it for equity, right in the middle. We came, we advocated, we're really vocal about this. I'm really proud of how I'm raising my daughter because I'm raising her to not be quiet. So if somebody steps on your toe, you talk about it. And that's the way we're going to get the system to see us. Because if we don't, we're quiet, and usually the Latino community is a very community where we don't do waves. That's kind of our culture. We're really respectful. We're a lot into respect. So sometimes we'll be quiet because if you're an elder, I won't talk back to you. That's part of our culture. That's why we're kind of assumed dumb, and we're not, because we have a big idea of what respect should be and how it should look like. And so in our culture, you don't talk back to a nasty adult. That's part of it. You don't talk back to teachers, you don't talk back just in general to elders. And so, unfortunately, here in Kitsap County, that's commonly taken for they're dumb, they don't know how to advocate, they don't do anything, so they're just quiet. Some of them, unfortunately, are not up to date with their paperwork, and so immigrant status does make a change between if you're going to be loud or not. So that's why, in my personal experience, I decided to be loud enough for my community and everyone else. Because if I don't shout, if I don't talk, if I don't speak the truth, my community is very limited on it because immigration can come in, and that's something that happens a lot in my community. People get taken advantage of their jobs, and then I'll take eyes on you, and they don't pay them. And so it's constantly a community that suffers so far. So that's why I decided I'll be a voice then, right? I have a lot of voice to give in that sense.
All right, thanks. All right, Aiden, you're up.
Right. Hafideitu samzu buahuski Aiden Moore. Samoruzugi London Sinanapu, Familian Toredo, and Kamigarias Kinatinahandia. Demankulazugi the Paulsbugi Tanus Kwame. Za Kuketungo I Fino Samoru, I Fino Nativu, just with the Tres Años. So my name is Aiden Moore. I'm Chamorro. Man, I'm also gay, if that comes up in the conversation today. Just another kind of marginalized experience. I've grown up in Paulsbo. I went to school in LA, but I live here now. I've been learning Chamorro for 3 years, I think, or since about November 2020. I started kind of reconnecting with the language that my grandparents speak, with my mom who's in the room today. So yeah, I grew up in Paulsbo, white passing, feeling white passing, and it wasn't really like WIT has the same kind of story. Like we had Chamorro food growing up, but we didn't really know anything about where my grandparents came from. Guam is a colony of the United States, or a territory, if you believe what they say. It's one of the last non-self-governing territories in the world recognized by the UN, so there's no kind of self-determination. The people who live on Guam don't get to decide their political status. They're kind of one large military base. On the island, I'll get into the history at some point, but the military occupies about a third of the island. The native people own about a third of the island, and the rest of the land is split up between other people, whether they're, whoever they are. Maybe they're military families or what have you. But my grandparents' experience was in World War II, the island was occupied by the Japanese. They were put into concentration camps by the Japanese Imperial Army. They were born in 1940, so they were very young, but they have stories about like hiding in caves and the forced marches and everything. After the war, the Americans liberated Guam. They put them back in concentration camps. They took all of the land. They built bases, and then they brought more foreign workers to kind of fuel the economy. They didn't give a lot of opportunities to Chamorros. I was just looking earlier. The first ever election for governor was in 1969. So Guam had been under Navy martial law for like 70 years. The U.S. Gained possession of Guam in 1898, and for all of that time, they had no political status. Guam has been colonized for over 500 years by the Spanish for a long time, and then the Americans. Anyways, so all this being said, my grandparents didn't really want to talk about any of this. They left as soon as they could, basically, and just tried to be American. I mean, to them that was being different, but they raised my mom as if she were white, and so I can't blame them for not sharing that with me. But as it stands, there's only 40,000 people in the world who speak Chamorro, so I've been on a journey pretty rigorously to learn that language and to connect with other people who are trying to reforge those connections, because there's the language, but there's the cultural values of respect, and I can tell you all the things I've learned from the culture, and just kind of the fight we have to protect our land as well from environmental destruction and everything. But yeah, I mean, I grew up learning about other cultures and other political struggles before I realized what my background was. I learned other languages before I learned the languages that my grandparents spoke. But similar to Native Americans, they weren't allowed to speak their language at school. They had to speak English, so they had a lot of trauma around that as well. They would get in trouble at school if they spoke that language, and unfortunately were made fun of at home too, just for different, not being able to read or write in the language. And so they didn't really want to pass that along. We've been really fortunate to be in touch with them and to kind of be in touch over Zoom and talk more. But for my grandma, she left when she was probably 18, and she's been back once or twice. She never wants to go back. And there's just way too much trauma there. So just all of that kind of inherited history is what we indigenous people have to deal with day to day. Even if we're white passing or to whatever degree of privilege we have, I just feel kind of the weight of my whole family's history. And regardless to say, when I'm looking at what's happening in Palestine, it's just so many parallels. And there's a Chamorro diaspora, there's a Jewish diaspora, there's a Palestinian diaspora. Just all of the ways we can be broken by these larger systems.
Thanks. Thanks, Aiden. Yeah. All right, Daryl. You gonna follow those two up?
I know, right?
You can do it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daryl Riley. I'm a businessman in the community, nonprofit founder. I saw how some of you guys, I was looking for eyebrows raised when she said up from slavery this year, right? Because I usually watch people's reaction when they hear that, and it's usually like, what is that? Or, oh shit, what is that? And we'll talk about that, but it's just something occurred to me while these two were speaking, that they both have something that I just realized at the age that I am, that I don't have. And that's a history of my culture, right? All I know is what I see in books and what I see in the African American Museum. That's not my history. That's American history. Slavery is American history. And I just realized how rich their lives must be, you know, in the search, to have a pathway to search for their culture. And I didn't mean to go there. I just found it struck me. I'm a business owner. I'm a husband. I'm a father. But as you can see, I'm also a black man. I always knew what racism was. I experienced the most dangerous white gang in the country, the Chicago Police, at 16. Right? I had my interactions with them. And they had showed me before what racism really was. You know, I'm glad you said it was about power, because some stuff ain't racism, it's just dumb shit. But racism is basically about power. You know, so we need to have that identified. I'm also glad you mentioned the year 1948, when Israel became a state. And that's what this is all about. It's about money and power, which is always what it's about. And in saying that, I'm the founder of the Up From Slavery Initiative, because see, in spite of my 20 plus years of crack use and enforced this in prison, 2 of them here in your dear state of Washington, I own 3 businesses in a franchise now, you know, and my name means something today, you know. They don't have that other stuff to talk about anymore. So in finding myself in that position around the uprisings of George Floyd, I got tired of seeing white people commandeer black efforts. White people running Black Lives Matter all over Kitsap County, and I've been here since 1998, right? So I decided that I needed to do something, and got with a couple like-minded individuals. And the name comes from the book I was reading during the time of George Floyd's death. It's called Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And in it I was able to gauge how newly freed African American people who had been enslaved for years went from newly freed people in 1867 to having Black Wall Street in about 1920. That's less than 50 years. And that's what inspired me, because I had flipped my burger over and let the other side cook. And I'm able to experience what real freedom is. I built the Tulsa in my heart. I built the Tulsa, Oklahoma with my family there. You know, so I could relate to it from that, and I wanted to be able to pass it on, but not as a victimhood. Because when you hear slavery, you hear people start talking about their issues and how bad it's been, and from a victim standpoint. I'm not a victim. You know, I refuse to take that position. I recovered from crack. You know what I'm saying? I recovered from stints in prison. The rest of this stuff ain't about nothing. But I got into a few situations, and I used my hands and my mind and all that bad energy, and I created a life for myself, and I wanted to be able to help my community. So we got together, and we focused on financial literacy, we focused on wellness, and we focused on racial justice. Because as a black man, or any marginalized community, they're not able to do this if we are in poverty. 70% of our problems as people of color have to do with how to make a dollar and what to do with it when you get it. We haven't had access to, because what slavery did for some of you as well is put you on a trajectory where you inherited stuff from your family that you got now. You know what I'm saying? That we didn't have, just like I ain't got that history, I didn't have that head start. And then we got prisons, where you got retirement, I got recidivism. So it's still going on right here in our country, you know, but, you know, we have enough information, we have enough opportunities, and the big word in the black community is reparations, right? Well, for me, reparations is through opportunity. You know, I'm not looking for nobody to give me a check. Show me where to go get one, you know, and I'll figure out the rest. So that's what we do with Up From Slavery. We teach financial literacy to youth. Whitney helped us put together our package and the plan that we're trying to get into these school systems, because that's the beginning of empowerment. It's unkind of y'all not to teach our kids about money. You know that, right? Why are you being unkind to your kids? The school is mandated to teach financial literacy to schools and kids out since March of 2022. Did you know that? And all they're doing is checking the box. Sending a guy in from a bank, checking the box. But we don't want to check boxes. We want to color the whole motherfucking box in like a bowler panel. And that's what Up From Slavery is about. So don't let that name trigger you, because this is not unless we're empowering. I don't watch groups. I don't watch slave movies and shit like that. I don't want to trigger myself all over again. That's re-traumatizing. I don't want to hear nobody else talk about it. I don't want to hear nobody in these rooms complaining about the system and what they did 30 years ago and all that. I'm tired of that. We're empowered in this community. I think she's going to talk about allies and all that. But, you know, I'm just frustrated with radicalized individualism. And we all got the same problem. You know what I'm saying? This is a capitalistic society, and it's not going to change. Everything is about the dollar, so you got to figure out how to do it. And it's best to start with your kids. Give them a chance now, instead of wait till they're $100,000 in student loan debt and not know how to spend it. Sorry about that.
Get it, you know? Believe me, Daryl, when I invited you, I knew what I was getting into. So yeah, one of the things that actually a connection that Daryl made with me and Dee had posted a video, and this was months ago, but it's still stuck in my head, about how, you know, how deep institutional racism is. So for example, the video was about a man talking about how slavers would tell their whole plantation, next year I'm gonna let one of you free. And what did that do? But it bred this competition within, and people started telling on each other, and people started, you know, well, I'm the best slave, so let me go. And so it was this systemic individualism, and it divided, like I continue to say, it's this divide and conquer, right? So if we're fighting with each other, if Palestinians are fighting within each other, if the Arab nations are fighting within each other, they're not banding together to fight against imperialism and capitalism and you know, the superpowers. And that is a system that is created on purpose. Because again, I joke, I hate that word minority, because people of color are now the majority. And banding together and rising up, like there's so much change that we can take down these created systems if we work together to, again, that's the point of today, is like supporting different initiatives, different people doing these amazing people, all three different amazing stories, but there are a lot of them, you know, are similar. And so, yeah, that video that Dee posted just constantly plays in my head, that it's just, you know, it was created. And you know, histories are erased through racial gaslighting and assimilation. Assimilation's a form of that racial gaslighting. Like, no, don't worry about your culture. You don't get to learn it. I mean, yeah, so African Americans Africans that came here and became Americans, I mean, their cultures are erased. And, you know, there's a lot of different cultures created. Again, I lived outside of Philadelphia, and some of the coolest cultural events I had been to, you know, just because people, we need to have that connection to our people. And so, you know, Aiden and I, again, share that same thing where, you know, again, I didn't learn I was Palestinian until I was 27. And so my whole life I floated. I had, you know, anti-Arab racism really, really strong after 9/11. And, you know, being called towelhead, and kids would make like, I don't know if you all did this in middle school and high school, where you get a wet paper towel and throw it over the toilet when someone's in there. Anyway, girls used to do that all the time to me in the toilet, and they're like, oh, watch out, Osama's coming to get you. Like, it was awful. But, you know, it's one of those things where, again, like as I got older, became more white-facing, like I still deal with that, and I see it happening to other people. So that was my tangent. Okay, so let's talk about Here's a question, and this is kind of off the cuff. Do you all think in your lifetimes that you will see what is said to be equality? That you will see people, racism go away or marginalization go away? Well, do you think it will ever go away? A. B. If it does, will it be in your lifetime?
Personally, I don't. If we're realistic, I won't see equality. If I live to be my grandmother's age, 96, I don't think we will. But I will die knowing that I planted a lot of seeds for the next generation to bust it open. And for me, it's about that. It's about interrupting these systems, and that's it. Because we don't have the power, and as more we think that we're going to be able to eradicate the system, the global system, the more frustrated we will be, right? And so it's just about, for me, again, personally, it's about day at a time, what can I do, how can I interrupt, how can I bust this open, how can I disrupt, right? And who do I empower to follow through? That's how I see it. I don't think as long as capitalism is empowered in the way it is, I don't believe that social systems are bad or good in themselves, how we apply them, what we do with them, how capitalism became this thing about oppression and getting more, and that, as long as we live that, like, I don't think we'll reach equality at one point or another, right? We will kind of tip the scale. I have a lot of hope on these new generations. I'm really proud of my generation too, and other generations that kept on pushing forward to disrupt, and we all grow on each other's shoulders in that sense. But personally, I don't think, I see a glimpse every time that my daughter comes in and says, I did it, right? I see a glimpse of that. Every time that somebody says something, I see a glimpse of that, but not the equality part, the disruption part. And so I don't think I will, personally.
What about you, Aiden?
It's hard to say. You really can't predict the future. You couldn't have predicted the response in support of Palestine in the past 300 days. I don't, same thing with George Floyd, the defund the police movement. I know it's political, but nobody could have predicted that either. So I don't know, we have to just kind of work towards the best vision of the future that we have. Whether or not we get there is kind of immaterial. I struggle with how much can I do by myself, as one person, but doing your best. I wanted to say the young people are so incredible, and seeing what they, just how they think, and just in the years of the bullying, and I there's still so many problems, but I have a younger sister who's in high school too, and they band together, they'll stick up for people, where I never had that growing up really. But I've also met so many amazing people from all generations, so there's great people at all times. Whether or not we get there, I think we just have to do the best for ourselves and the people around us. But what was it? Ursula K. Le Guin said, something about the divine right of kings. If we had just, monarchies fell, and capitalism will fall too. Eventually, we just have to do our best and kind of seize the moments as they come up. Wow, I don't know. I mean, liberation within our lifetimes for Palestine is what we say, and you can't focus too narrowly or just not believe that things will happen, because if you don't believe in it, then it won't. So, yeah.
It's like Tinkerbell. Just kidding. All right.
So you said, you use the word equality, right? You use that sometimes next to the word justice and those type of things, right? And when you do that, to answer the question, that's the fight. There's always a fight for justice. There's always a fight for equality. This country was founded on that, right? And in order for it not to continue, they're going to have to change the Constitution, because the 13th Amendment allows prisons. All of your people are locked up for free labor. You got plantations around here that's still going on. And they're not going to do that. They're not going to change 13 because it suits their needs. January 6, 2020 wasn't that long ago. You think the people want to give up equality? We too busy taking this to kumbaya. And I disagree with you. Not that I think you're wrong. I just disagree with you about when capitalism falls. This country is about money. The world is about money. You can't even help nobody if you got money. She could rent this space if she ain't had no money or couldn't tap into
Credit
some funds.
card.
It's what we do with it and how we mobilize it. You know, but like again, everybody got this individualized radicalism. You know, they think they know best. You know, if all three of us walked in the building together, who do you think gonna get discriminated first? Who do you think they're gonna judge one way or another first? Don't matter if I got a suit on, they could be looking like they homeless. So I already know that I gotta put this outfit on that I can't ever take off. And I know that when I come out in this community, I gotta expect 1,000 cuts of racism. You know what? Most of the time I gotta act like they don't exist. Or y'all gonna be calling me threatening, or intimidating, or he's suspicious. When I probably make more than both your parents. You know? So, no, I don't think it's going to end. I think a lot of people benefit from it. You know, I think there's a lot of inside jobs. Black people sold Martin Luther King out. They sold Malcolm X out. There's some Palestinians that's on the other side that's helping them. It's just a fact of it. So where we going to put our focus at, though? My focus is on helping the kids have a better start. At least financially, right? And raise them right. If all y'all kids was financially apt and they had bank accounts at 6 and 12 and 14-year-old, and by the time they're 20 and 21-year-old, you know they can qualify for a mortgage for one of these overpriced ass houses, even if they work at McDonald's. That's a simple fix. You know? So capitalism is not going to end. This country's founded on money. You ever seen the dollar bill? You know what the symbols on the dollar bill mean? You know how many times you can fold the dollar bill and it mean and speak different things to you? Your social security number, you are part of the system. There's the number on your birth certificate and your social security number. The United States gets paid for you from the day of your birth. So I disagree with you that it's going to end. Somebody shows me every day before 10 a.m. that racism and equality ain't going to end without a fight. They don't give me a chance to be black before they show me. So I'm sorry if I'm not as optimistic, but I've been around again.
Are you showing your age? Just kidding. So yeah, okay. So it's you know, consensus is that it's definitely not going to end in their lifetime. That it's a fight to even get to a place, right? And so I guess my question is kind of how can you, like, I see how you all are kind of doing your part in fighting racism, marginalization within your communities, but how can other people do it, right? So in the beginning we talked about allyship is listening to, because Daryl mentioned, right? So white people with good intentions tend to take over and like, here, let me do this Black Lives Matter thing, and let me do this, and I'm going to help the brown people, and it's, you know, that form of kind of white saviorism. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, you know, because there are people who want to help and support, what are ways that people can, you know, build that solidarity with you or help and support in situations where, like, you know, okay, in your community, financial literacy, so how can people help and support, or in the schools, or, so the idea is giving, you know, like I say, I always like to give action of what people can do to support, like, people who are racialized and marginalized. Daryl, you go, you're itching.
I want to tackle this one first this time. Let's be clear. You always need good, wholesome, good-hearted white people to start moving. If you think If you ever watched the Bloody Sunday riots in Selma, Alabama, you see a white man getting beat just as bad as Martin Luther King and the rest of them. Look that man up. That's who opens some doors. So it takes people who have a lighter pigmentation than myself sometimes to open a door for me or some other person and get involved. In terms of what you can do, I mean, I don't want to keep coming back to it being about poverty, but that's what it is. Poverty is oppression. Financial freedom is the way to look for it, to make the world. See, it don't matter who get elected president for me. I just got to position myself to benefit by both of them. We got the tax code, we got all these different things that we're under that nobody's paying attention to. So if you want to do something, talk to your schools why they aren't teaching financial literacy. And it's been mandated since 2022, I'm sorry. Talk to them about that. And while you're at it, tell them we're giving out bank accounts for kids that go through ours. How can you not turn that down? How can you turn that down? You're gonna give your kid a chance. Did you know how to fill out a check when you got to your high school? Stop being unkind to your kids. Let's figure out how to help them out. Because most of us might not see it in.
Go back this way?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have an answer like that. If you want to get involved with Palestine organizing, there's been a growing group in Kitsap. You can talk to me or Janice. There's also a nonprofit in Kitsap called Voices of Pacific Island Nations. My mom's on the board for that. I saw Promise was speaking at their summer retreat. They're having an auction coming up, I think a week from Saturday, on the 24th. Yeah, we'll be there.
They have the Luau fundraiser too. I think that's coming up.
Everyone's, that's what I was talking about, the auction. I think it's an auction, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, everyone's already going, it sounds like. That's great.
Anytime there's a Pacific Islanders, I mean, that festival this weekend was so,
We did some dancing.
The
They
pork.
brought us up on stage last year, so some for a good time. Be curious. Don't be afraid of like speaking out or like you said, like use your voice. I'm surprised that I have this reputation now of yelling at Derek Kilmer. I'm like,
I love it. I love it. I knew Daryl would like that too. We've had conversations about him.
You just gotta kind of trust that, trust yourself to do the right thing and see where that goes. I don't know. I don't have a nonprofit. I don't have the same answers. So.
That's okay. No, that's great.
For my community, it's a little bit different. First and foremost, because when we're talking about money, I'm with Daryl in this part, like, money is power. But what happens with a community that doesn't have access to knowing this because they don't speak the language? So we're put in down here because of that, because nothing is accessible for my community. If somebody walks in and doesn't know the language and asks for a doctor, they'll get denied because they can't make themselves understand. If we go into a bank and you want to change a check, your money's worth nothing because nobody understands what you're saying. So I really don't like my daughter taught me this word, oppression Olympics, and I don't like it. Right? Because that's how we divide each other. Like, I suffer more than you. You suffer more than me. I'm positioned in this worst place. We are. If you have pigmentation in your skin, we'll all have it really bad. From different ways, and I think building solidarity is about not having that race with the oppression Olympics, but sitting down, hey brother, how is it for you? What's going on? Because I'm a really big advocate. This is part of what we do, is raise awareness about language access plans, which are the first step of equality and equity, right? And inclusion and belonging, right? You cannot talk about, I'm inclusive, I want everybody to come, if you're not building those structures for everybody sitting at the table to understand you and be able to communicate. So the way that you can support the Latino community is advocate. Everywhere you go, ask, do you have a language plan? When was it revised? I keep seeing a lot of people that kind of think that having somebody that kind of interprets or does the language, that's enough, right? It's not. It's not enough to have somebody that speaks Spanish in your organization. It's not enough. We need structure. We need cultural competency that knows our culture and why. Yesterday, a part of the work that I was doing was revising some flyers for this organization that we got them to translate, right? Because I also believe and know that when Daryl's saying like, money is power, yes, and education is power too. So we bet on that, education. My mission is to get the Latino community and anybody in the way that wants to educated in financial, educated in their own culture, educated in racism, educated in the school systems. Because our school systems are not built for a community that doesn't speak the language. So if you're Latina, your kid's is not learning how you should. And we get thousands of dollars every year given to the ESL students in schools, and they don't use it for that. The only thing that we'll do if you're lucky is get interpreters sometimes. That's part of our job in Central. We've been able to advocate, don't use kids as interpreters. Don't use brothers and sisters. Don't use anybody, because there's the money flowing for us and nobody's using it. They're putting it somewhere else. So for me, the way you can help my communities, ask for them. Make sure that your school system has it, your business has it, your nonprofit has it. Because that's another part. We as nonprofits, we're obligated to have a language access. Any organization that receives federal funding or state funding or works with the community has to have a language access plan, which basically is the first step of creating the systems for my community or any other community. Like the Guatemalan community, the Chamorro community if they don't speak the language, the Filipino community, to come in and have systems that are built for them so they'll understand and they'll have access. Here in Kitsap County, I've been living here 6 years. I haven't found one organization that has a language access plan revised and utilized in accordance to the community's needs. Not just one, not one. We're making a lot of advocacy because of this, because my people can't access anything. That's the worst part. They can't. Not money, not anything. And as Daryl was saying, as we go browner, the less we have, right? My daughter, we went to the beach the other day and she was saying she got darker and she said, oh my God, I feel lighter. I said, why? Because I lost a bunch of privilege, Mom, now. That is the reality. It's funny, but that is the reality. The Guatemalan community, dark skin, they can't come into a restaurant and be served. Like, we're going back to the 1950s. You say, no, now, yes, there is. There is a lot of racism going here. There's a lot of people that don't want to serve them. There's a lot of people, places they can't go in. They've been made, for example, to worship. Because churches won't take into consideration they need masses in their language, God forbid, right? That something would be adapted to them. So just kind of keep that in mind the next time that you're with somebody from the Latino community and talk about it. I think talking about the lack of these structures and systems is the best way to support it.
Advocacy is just, for me also, is just very much tapping into our privilege first. What do we have, and reflecting on other people who might not have that, and how can we use that. So okay, last question, because we're going to wrap up. Does anyone have, I know Gabriella has some events coming up. Do any of you have any events or anything you kind of want to promote? I know Daryl's got a bajillion things. So I'll let you start, Daryl. Give me top 3 things you have, and we'll move down the line.
Well, we've had 3 major events in like the last 45 days. We had a reentry simulation in May 31st. We had 107 attendees. Then we had a male golf outing around male wellness, July 13th. And then on last Friday, we just were invited to Whatcom County to do a reentry simulation there, probably the largest one we ever did. So
What is the re-entry center?
a reentry simulation is a program we kind of got from the Department of Justice through Kids Up Strong and Up From Slavery. And we create identities for leadership, the commissioners, the mayors, the judges, the police. We create these identities for them as newly released people, right, from incarceration. And they have to go around to the different tables and follow their life card. The life card says tells them what to do. They have to go to probation. They have to buy food. They have to go take a UA. They have to go to court. And they had to follow this life card. And just about everybody went to jail.
It was awful. It was so frustrating.
Yeah.
You have to have all 3 IDs. Oh wait, you go here, you need to buy a bus pass. You don't have money to buy a bus pass, so you gotta go. Yeah, it just shows you the struggles and realities of people who come out of incarceration. Not only, it's just more barriers.
Yeah. And a lot of people, everybody in this room knows somebody that's having struggles with that jail in and out of it. And a lot of times we want to blame them for giving up. We want to say, why can't they get it? The system is designed to keep them tripped up, to eventually it becomes easier just to go back. I promise you, I know. I went voluntarily a time or two, you know? But I'm flipping it now. I have a paradigm shift. I'm gonna create the opportunity that I need, you know? So don't give up on that individual. The system is designed to make them give up. You just gotta figure out it took me a while to get it right, so I don't give up on nobody. But this is a big part of what we're dealing with. This is a big problem. You know, one of the 2 highest budgets in the state of Washington is the military and Department of Corrections. Did you know that? Plantation. You're talking about what they're trying to do. They're already doing it like over there and over here, locking people up for free labor. OSHA doesn't even regulate prisons, so you can't refuse. You can't argue about 13 cents an hour. Who's going to hear you? The only entity that OSHA doesn't manage is the Department of Prisons. Think about it. And they always talking about regulations. It's a capitalistic game. You know, we got to learn how to play it better. That's where our power lies. We already got enough upstream relationships. He know Kilmer. I know Rolf. She know it. We already got the relationships in this community that most communities don't have. We got them up personal and closer. I just talked to a lady about you. You finna be our first partner on the language barrier. I just spoke to a lady like 4 hours ago about that. And I hadn't met you yet, so I'm gonna connect you two. Help solve some of that problem for you. She's interested in getting involved in that. That's real simple. We got it all what we need. We just got to get at the table and have the hard conversations, because I'm not going to agree with you all the time. And that don't make either one of us wrong. That just means I see it differently. Don't I have that right? Let's talk about that before you get mad at me for disagreeing with you. Let me say here's why, before you don't want to talk to me no more until our mom's funeral.
Thanks.
We're doing it to ourselves. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. All right, Aiden, anything coming up for Kitsap Palestine Solidarity Group?
Janice might know a little better. There's a film screening on Saturday.
Yeah, I have that in my event slide.
Okay. I'm going to be out of town this weekend at the Marianas Festival in Portland, but
Nice.
we do demonstrations every Sunday, flip-flopping between the ferry at Kingston and Bainbridge Island. It's a good time. I'm the one that brings the speakers. That's been fun to just connect to people. There's a Friday, every Friday at 4:30 by the Viking statue in Karlsbo. Isn't it funny we live in this little Norway?
I don't know pull that down.
Just tell me when. We'll pull up.
Yeah.
We'll pull up.
They got a big ceasefire thing. They can just hook around it, pull it down.
I remember being in high school or something on the ferry, and one of my friends, we were like on the Bainbridge Ferry, he like pointed at the land, he was like, oh, my grandparents could have settled there when they came, you know, like they could have owned all of that, like but where did they take it from? You know?
Yeah.
There's so much work to be done in Baltimore, you know, in Kitsap. Yeah. So show up for that. The Vopin luau auction. I can get more details for that for people. And I just want to say, like you mentioned, the military. That's the biggest threat to Guam for me. Guam, like I said, doesn't have self-governance. They are building a they're building a Marine base for 5,000 Marines that are leaving Okinawa because the Okinawans hate them so much. The Chamorros can't refuse. And they're building a firing range. They're going to fire like millions of bullets every year on top of the aquifer that 80% of the people on the island drink from. They're closing down fishing grounds. They're tearing down forts to build military infrastructure for a war that none of us want to be in. Right? No, we don't want war. People in Guam don't want war. None of us want that. So I don't sit around and think about. I don't know. It's like sometimes the end of the world is what we indigenous people have to think about. Whether it's capitalism or whatever. Like they are building a military. It's hard. I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you.
If you did, we would all be on it, right?
Yeah. Okay, we can start with the Viking.
Yeah. All right, Gabriella.
For us, part of what we're doing is creating safe spaces for the Latino community, so they can feel embraced, that they belong also. I don't marry the narrative of immigrant. I think that's another way of othernizing the Latino community, because when you ask in Kitsap County, our immigrant community, everybody goes to the Mexicans or the Latinos, right? I mean, people from Ukraine, from other parts of, nobody's immigrant but the Mexican community, right? And so that's another way that these structures othernize us. Or I was invited once to an immigrant kid, and they told me, oh, you have a daughter, she would like to go. No, because she's not an immigrant, she was born in the United States, so nope, no immigrant here, right? So I think just revising how we talk to other people, that's not trying to or othernizing them, that's a good way. And so right now we're having 2 Latino festivals. These Latino festivals are they're really important and dear to our hearts because it's a lot of work. One of them is at North Kitsap High School. And if you know the history with the Latinos last year. And
September 14.
Yep.
Just some flyers in the back.
And North Kitsap, this is a great triumph for us, and we work really hard for it. And the other one is in the La Casa Máxima de Estudios, Olympic College too, because we bet it for education. My mission is to educate as much as I can. And so we're having another festival on the 28th. All of them are to celebrate, what do we celebrate in September? Hispanic heritage. So they disbanded my daughter's club on that month.
Now there's going to be a festival.
To celebrate our culture, so come on by. It's an opportunity to create jobs too for our community because like I said, the language is a barrier. We don't get all these opportunities to come and sell and do whatever they offer. We're not charging for anybody from the BIPOC community to put a stand and sell whatever they want to sell. So we are creating jobs and a little revenue for the community. So come in, join us. They're wonderful. I have a wonderful team that we're working with, and both of them, and have a good time. Also, we have a big reputation that Mexicans, we're partiers, right? Latino, we are.
Best parties. Best parties. Best parties. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I wish we could keep going. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I do want to present you all with some tokens of gratitude. I know you already have a kafia. So this is a traditional like a za'atar and oil dish, but you can use it for whatever you want. Daryl, this is a
Sending the invoice.
this is a Palestinian freedom scarf, a kafia. It's nice and crisp and will match your other black and white outfits. And this is also one, but this is made from a Palestinian women's coalition. And so the weave is a bit different and it is a bit lighter and airier. So this is for you. Please wear it with pride. And thank you all so much for blessing us with this. This was yes. So if y'all could just stick around at the end when I'm done this, just for a picture. Try not to sneak out now. But yeah, I'm gonna just slide right through these. We don't obviously have time for discussion. Here's our action items for the months. Listen and learn. Again, listen, advocate, listen to what people need. The next one is vote informed, right? So we have to know where our money's going. We have to know who is in office and who's making decisions for us. So primaries passed. Make sure you vote informed. Speak out to political leaders if you see them in person. I'm all over Emily's and Randall's LinkedIn anytime she posts. So attend events. So join in solidarity by attending events and kind of join in with that. Understanding your privilege. Check in with yourself. Again, it's not to demonize privilege, but it's just to be aware of the privilege that we are granted. Checking yourself, words, habits, kind of like Gabriela said, that word articulate is a microaggression for a lot of people of color. There was a recent one about how someone said that, Kamala Harris, she's so articulate. It's that mini insult, that you wouldn't, Biden's clearly not articulate. So, and then boycott. I'm going to keep pushing the BDS list, boycott things. There's an app on your phone called No Thanks. You can scan something. If it is, if you're in a store, you can scan it, and it's a Palestinian developer created it, and it should pull up if the money goes to genocide. So one of my favorite things now is I have a lot of clients that want to meet at Starbucks for meetings. So I like to just go in and sit down and just stare at them. And they're just like, do you want anything? I'm like, nope, just sitting here. And so because I never get anything, the person always feels weird. So they never get anything. So we're just taking up space. It's great. Okay, these are all the sources. Those will be sent out later. As Aiden said, upcoming weekly demonstrations, I put them in the event's email. On Saturday, there is a silent follow-up film screening at the Ground Zero for Nonviolent Action Center in Paulsbo, and it aims to raise awareness about the grave issues of radiation poisoning and nuclear contamination in U.S. And globally. So that is on Saturday at 4. And then there's an art build for Palestine on Sunday. A member here, Mary Lovell, is doing that. And emails here. So if anyone's interested in these, this information's on the event sheets in the back. So feel free to take them, contact Mary, and that is Sunday from 1 to 5. And then this is still a really cool thing. I actually signed up. It's called Reframing Palestine. There is a group out of, an education group out of the UK, Palestinian-led, and it talks about kind of reframing Palestine. So it's a workshop. It's really interactive. I looked up the previous one. It looks really cool. That is also in the event sheet in the back. Really important. So unfortunately, the donations are not covering the very expenses I am doing at each time. So I have to cancel next month's talk. So the next talk will be in October. So October 17th, it'll still be the third Thursday. And we're going to kind of do a combination of activism and voting. Originally, I was going to focus all on voting because it was right before the elections. I don't want to talk all about that, but I do have an amazing woman who used to work in politics in DC that is, she's a liberation strategist. So she's got a lot of cool insights on what it means to vote for third party and Green Party and how that actually affects the voting systems. So I'm going to ask her, she'll zoom in, and don't worry, she talks way loud, so we're not going to have the issue we had last month. But I also want to do kind of a combination of kind of what activism looks like for Palestine as the year goes on. So that will be October 17th. If you have time to write on your card, great. Talk about what you learned and came away with. An action item you'd like to do, something else you would like to learn. Super duper awesome. As of always, you can support this continuing because we're planning on having a big Palestinian feast in December. Nadia's going to make some amazing food. Actually, I think my mom's going to come up and make some amazing food, and she's actually going to finally open up about her experiences as a first-generation Palestinian. So we're going to have a feast. It's going to be dope. So please donate because I need I don't want to have to charge people to come to the feast. So you can buy stickers, you can have the za'atar and oil, or you can scan and donate. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Go visit Lauren in the back, buy some jewelry too, help those children, and thank you all. This was amazing. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, everyone.